Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Sean Wolfrey, and as the lead on sustainable agriculture and food systems for the International Institute for Sustainable Development, IISD, it is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of IISD to this UN Food Systems Summit Stocktaking Moment side event on promoting responsible investment in agriculture to spur food systems transformation. Now, food system transformation is very much at the heart of all the discussions taking place in Rome and online this week during the stock-taking moment. And I think this reflects a growing awareness that our food systems do in fact need to be transformed to feed a growing global population with healthy food, sustainably, and in a way that generates and ensures sustainable and equitable socioeconomic outcomes. Something else that is widely acknowledged is the importance of increased public and private investment as a driver of food systems transformation, much needed transformation. But what's less widely discussed, though, is that not all investments are equal. And in fact, some kinds of investment in our agriculture and food systems can have problematic socioeconomic and environmental outcomes on our agriculture and food systems. So what we really need is responsible investment in agriculture and food systems, the kinds of investments that generate and contribute to making our food systems more inclusive, more equitable, more sustainable, and more resilient. We at IISD have been working for around a decade to support efforts by governments and other stakeholders to promote and encourage responsible investment in agriculture and food systems. And with that in mind, we decided to organize this side event to provide an opportunity for some of our partners to share what promoting responsible investment in agriculture and food systems means from their perspective. And to share as well how promoting responsible investment is catalytic and really helps to drive food systems transformation in their countries and to achieve sustainable development goals that they have set out. And so that's what we'll be hearing about in today's event. Now, before I hand over to my colleague Nuryati, who will provide some scene-setting remarks and will moderate the panel discussion and Q&A today, I just need to run through a few housekeeping matters. First, you should be aware that this is a public event and is being recorded. The recording will be made available on IISD's website in due course. We also encourage you to rename yourself using the rename function in Zoom. Please display your name and organizational affiliation so we can see who's joining us today. After the panel discussion, there will be an opportunity to ask questions to the panelists or to provide a comment on any of the topics discussed during the panel discussion. If you would like to do so, please can you type your question or comment into the chat box. We will be monitoring this throughout the event today and we'll be collecting questions and comments, so please do use the chat box for that function. Finally, at the close of the event today, you'll be provided with a very short survey to collect your feedback on today's event. We would hugely appreciate it if you could take just 2 minutes to fill this out and send it back to us. Okay, and with that, I'll pass it back to you, Nuryati, to lead us through what I'm expecting to be a very interesting discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Sean. Good morning, good afternoon to all of you joining us today, and a very warm welcome. My name is Nuryati Maina, an international law advisor with IISD and joining you from Nairobi. As Sean has mentioned, we can all agree today our food systems need transformation. Hunger remains an issue, as does rural poverty. In fact, 84% of the global poor are living in rural areas. The 2023 State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World Report, also known as the SOFI report, was just released 2 weeks ago, and it highlights some staggering figures. Between 691 million and 783 million people in the world faced hunger in 2022, meaning about 122 million more people faced this crisis in 2022 than in 2019. This shows that despite all our efforts, there's still enormous work to be done. We're also acutely aware that our food systems are particularly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, as is being witnessed in multiple regions and more so in developing countries. Simultaneously, our food systems are a major contributor to climate change. The 2021 UN Food Systems Summit recognized that a significant increase in responsible public and private investment is needed to transform food systems so that they are better able to feed the global population without harming our natural environment, while also providing decent livelihoods. So what is meant by responsible investment? So, well, in 2014, the CFS, the Committee on World Food Security, endorsed the principles for responsible investment in agriculture and food systems. As set out in these principles, responsible investments in agriculture and food systems are those that contribute to food security and nutrition, improve the livelihoods of smallholder farmers, contribute to sustainable and inclusive economic development and eradication of poverty, foster gender equality and women's empowerment, sustainably manage and protect natural resources, incorporate inclusive and transparent governance structures, support local infrastructure, and respect, protect, and promote the rights and interests of local communities. They should also strengthen the resilience of food systems to the impacts of climate change and other shocks. So in other words, responsible investments in agriculture and food systems are precisely those kind of investments that drive food systems transformation in the direction of the sustainable development outcomes we are all working towards. And as Sean mentioned, at ISD, for almost a decade now, we have been working with governments and other stakeholders to help put these principles of responsible investment into practice, including by assisting policymakers to integrate them into domestic laws and policies, also developing practical tools and knowledge products that can help the private sector integrate these principles into operational and management practices. And also, it includes working with civil society actors to support their efforts to advocate for inclusive processes and for the rights and interests of local communities affected by investments. Our work, which has been generously supported by the Swiss Agency for Development Cooperation, has been focused primarily on Africa and Southeast Asia. In the latter, we are working with the ASEAN Secretariat, FAO, and Grow Asia to support the implementation of the ASEAN guidelines on promoting responsible investment in food, agriculture, and forestry, the first regional iteration of the CFS guidelines, tailored to a local context. So today you will hear us referring to this as the ASEAN guidelines in short. I'm very excited to have this discussion because we have invited representatives from both public and private sector who we've been working with to provide their own perspectives in how they are spurring food systems transformation through engaging in responsible investment, recognizing inter-system linkages. So ensuring, for example, that food systems, ecological systems, and economic systems create positive synergies that are inclusive and equitable rather than work at cross purposes. I'd like to now turn to our panel to share with us the steps they've been taking in this direction. Today, we're very pleased to have with us Dr. Leli Nuryati, who is the director of the Center for Plant Variety Protection and Agriculture Permits at the Ministry of Agriculture, Indonesia, and the ASEAN-RAI focal point for Indonesia's Ministry of Agriculture. In her current role, she carries out management of the protection and registration of plant variety, as well as agricultural licensing services. We also have with us Christine Kanini, who is currently Deputy Chief State Counsel in the Government Transactions Division in the Office of the Attorney General, Kenya. She has a deep understanding of the Kenyan land sector, having been a member of various task forces. Sorry. Thank you. She has a deep understanding of the Kenyan land sector, having been a member of various task forces that have led to legislative land reforms in the country. She sits on several boards of state corporations as an alternate to the Attorney General. We also have with us Andy Ikwan, who is the Director of Programs, Agriculture, Entrepreneurship, and Financial Inclusion at Masiko, Indonesia. He is an access to finance expert supporting the financial sector and MSMEs in Indonesia. Andy is experienced in designing capacity building programs and bundled advisory and financial service models for MSMEs, including for women and youth. His work also includes how to use digital channels to achieve sustainability objectives while optimizing business operations. And lastly, we have Peter Wangara, who is an accomplished financial expert and practiced finance for over a decade before founding Limbua Group Limited. He is passionate about the empowerment of smallholder communities and has achieved this through the development of a sustainable food production company in Kenya. Limbua Group has led to a positive increase in the financial fortunes of thousands of families in rural areas in Kenya. So very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you so much for joining us. And I know it's quite early for a few of you. And I'd like to begin with Dr. Leli. Could you tell us a bit about Indonesian government's objectives on food systems transformation? How important is responsible investment in food and agriculture to achieving these objectives? And what is the Indonesian government doing to attract such responsible investment? So over to you, Dr. Leli.
Ruthie, I think we've just lost Dr. Leli. I saw her a minute ago, but I think she's just dropped off the call. Perhaps she's trying to reconnect. Maybe you can ask the next panelist.
No problem, no problem. So we'll start with Christine. So Christine, the question I have for you is, in trying to encourage responsible investment, what legislative measures is Kenya's government taking to support food systems transformation and that address the intersystem linkages that I mentioned earlier?
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Nyagudye, for hosting us. I just want to say that, first of all, that our country is really focused on responsible investment in agriculture. It has done this through several policies. I'll start with the policies, like the current government policy of bottom-up economic transformation agenda. One of the key agendas is food security. And as a priority areas, it has made up certain, or it has come up with certain interventions, such as organizing farmers into cooperative societies to ensure that they receive startup capital and technical assistance. They also intend to increase production and productivity by provision of fertilizers. This has already started happening. And providing feeds and expansion of cultivated and irrigated acreage. They have also have one of the interventions to reduce post-harvest losses by providing warehouses and drying and cooling facilities. All these endeavors are intended to ensure that the country becomes food secure and increases farmers' income, and of course creates jobs for the country. I just want to highlight a few of the things that have actually been initiated and are actually ongoing. The government came up with what they call the Land Commercialization Initiative. This one is being implemented under the Agricultural Sector Transformation and Growth Strategy. Under this strategy, our vision is, and goal and priorities are to transform the agricultural sector, and it identifies key enablers such as digital technologies, irrigation mechanization, research and innovation, and public-private partnerships. And to implement this strategy, the ministry came up with a team. I was honored to be part of the team. And this team developed what we are calling the agricultural leases, for the leasing framework that will be used to guide in the implementation of this Land Commercialization Initiative. Now, in these leases, we've incorporated the CFI responsible agricultural investment principles in several ways. In the lease itself, we've ensured that the community, first of all, has to participate. We've had to sensitize communities when we were identifying the land, although the land that has been set aside is land belonging to public entities, we are alive to the fact that that land might have communities settled or communities that benefit from it. So we've involved the communities by sensitizing them and educating them on the initiative before it kicks off. This ensures that the community is aware and they buy into the investment, whatever investment the private sector will come in with. We've also ensured that in the leasing framework, that the investor must ensure that they are there to environmental and ecological concerns, that they must ensure that they undertake the activities per the lease, and part of the termination of those, part of the clauses on the termination of those leases are for reasons for failure to adhere to or even engage in adverse activities, which of course might affect the environment, disregard the labor rights, yeah. And we'll also ensure that the private sector does not come to compete with the communities, or if they have to come and do the same thing, the same activities that the community is undertaking, we have to ensure that there's a complementarity aspect of it. I want to thank the ISD and the FAO for building capacity of the Kenyan team. We managed to ensure, we managed to understand how we can put the linkage between the RAI principles into our documents, courtesy of a training that we attended on land policy tools for responsible investment agriculture, which was hosted by the IISD and FAO. Even in this initiative, the land commercialization initiative, we've been working hand in hand with the FAO to ensure that we actually implement this responsible agriculture aspect. I also want to mention another project that is already implemented, and members of the panel or the ones who've joined us online can Google. These are the National Agriculture and Rural Inclusive Growth Project. This is a project which has been undertaken between the government, that is the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries and Irrigation, together with the World Bank. And its objective is to increase agricultural productivity and profitability of targeted rural communities in selected counties. This has been a success and it's still ongoing. Nyagudi, I want to just quickly point out that our constitution is our Grundnorm, our main law, capitalizes or includes the aspects of responsible agricultural investment. Article 10 of our constitution states that the national values and principles of governance include human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of the marginalized. There is also the issue of good governance, integrity, transparency, and accountability. And finally, we also have sustainable development. I also want to mention that within the same constitution, under the Bill of Rights chapter, it's very detailed. It provides for social, economic, and also labor rights. There are several provisions in the constitution. I just want to pick in on the one for touching on agriculture. There's the Article 43 of our constitution, which provides that every person has a right to be free from hunger and to have adequate food of acceptance quality. So that is already enshrined in the constitutions, and therefore any other legislation that the country has come up with has to factor in all these aspects. So having said that, I want to highlight that there are several legislations in the country, which of course are geared to ensure that we have food sustainability. I'll just briefly highlight some of them. They include the Irrigation Act. This one, as I've highlighted, it's one of the interventions that the country has come up with. We are trying to encourage reliance on irrigation, because as you know, the environment is not as it used to be. The climate change has affected the country, and to ensure sustainability in food supply, we've come up with various initiatives to ensure that we have irrigation, creation of dams or construction of dams in various areas, to just boost the food security aspect. We also have the Crops Act. We have the Agriculture and Food Authority Act. These are acts that are established to ensure that the agriculture, which includes livestock and all that, is adheres to the respective laws and also ensures that whatever is done within that sector is for sustainability. We also have the seeds and plant variety.
I'll have to cut you short.
Okay.
Perhaps you can, I welcome you to put the additional legislation in the chat box just for the interest also of the participants. But okay, we'll come back to you. Maybe perhaps the next round you'll be able to shed light on what the laws are trying to achieve in incentivizing the right kind of investments in irrigation, but also plants as well as livestock. I'd like to turn now to Dr. Leli. I see you've joined us. Welcome back. Could you tell us a bit about, and thank you, Christine, for giving us Kenya's perspective on the legal frameworks that you are undertaking and initiatives to promote more responsible investment that achieves the country's objectives around food systems transformation. So now we'll turn over to Southeast Asia. Dr. Leli, could you tell us a bit about Indonesia, the Indonesian government's objectives on food systems transformation? How important is responsible investment in food and agriculture to achieving these objectives? And what is the Indonesian government doing to attract such responsible investment?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, I have the problem with the internet connection. Do you hear me, my voice?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Why is it important for Indonesia to promote responsible investment in agriculture? Yes, it is. Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world, stretching over 35 provinces with more than 2.
Sorry, Dr. Leli, I don't know if you can hear us, but we've lost you. Perhaps if you could switch off your video.
In Indonesia is projected to increase up to more than 300 million people in 2050. So a growing population and middle class, a high grade of urbanization, and also rising income have led to change in food demand and consumption, as well as dietary patterns. Agri-food sector, including agriculture, during pandemic COVID-19 saw the GDP agriculture increased 16.24% in the second quarter compared to the first quarter of 2020, while national GDP decreased 4.1%. The agriculture sector contributes to the national GDP, so it is important for providing employment for almost half on its total population. Agriculture will continue to attract foreign and domestic investment, particularly in developing regions. Increased investment in food, agriculture, and forestry in Indonesia is needed to help achieve food and nutrition security, to improve food safety, and to create economic growth and opportunity. Investment in food, agriculture, and forestry needs to be responsible and sustainable. Therefore, promoting responsible investment in food is important because this is the roadmap for how private investor and government ensure investment in Indonesia are socially, economically, and environmentally sustainable and inclusive. They include 10 social, environmental, and governance principles about how to avoid risks and have positive impacts specifically in the food, agriculture, and forestry sectors. So how do the Indonesian government's effort to encourage responsible investment in agriculture help the country achieve its food system transformation objective and broader sustainable development goals, such as respect to food security, nutrition, and environmental survey and climate resilience? As we know that the government of Indonesia has a bold commitment on food system transformation that is reflected on the regulatory framework of the transformation. First, for food law, 2012 is the main legal basis for food development as well as food system. Second is the presidential decree 2001 that reiterate the commitment of the government of Indonesia to implement and achieve the SDGs. And third, presidential decree number 18 in 2020 on midterm development plan 2024, that state the food system transformation has been designed as one of the national priorities. For recently, the government of Indonesia has released Presidential Decree 21 on National Food Agency. We call it Bapanas. So this institution is coordinating all the activity related to the food security. According to midterm development 2024, the food development is focused on increasing availability, access, and quality of food consumption, increasing access, price stability, and sustainability of food production, enhancing productivity and quality of human resource development in agriculture sectors, enhancing sustainability of agriculture resource support, such as efficiency and quality soils and water, promoting agroecosystem health, providing infrastructure and agricultural technology, as well as digitalization in agriculture. And of course, developing food system and governments, including strengthening national logistics system and sustainable food system. With respect to the complexity and diversity of Indonesia as archipelagic country and the challenges of food system, social, culture, climate change, the food system transformation will be implemented on the basis of three approaches: comprehensive and integrated of across cross-sectional issues and action areas development, inclusiveness through national platform that involves multi-stakeholders collaboration and partnership, and food system regionalization through promoting localizing food system across Indonesia. The regulation framework, of course, basic foundation of the food system transformation in Indonesia as key factors to achieve 2020 SDGs program. In addition to that, Indonesia have made some deregulation by issuing job creation law. The law is aimed to accelerate national development by giving easy doing business, to develop investment, to be able to open more jobs, which eventually create justice and people's welfare. Easy of doing business in the law will be focused on monitoring based on their level business activities, risk level and risk scale. The focus on monitoring evaluation is done by integrated system to make sure that business are responsible for the investment activities according to Indonesian regulation. Indonesia, as a member of ASEAN countries, follows and takes action on the 10 principles of the ASEAN-RAI and implements 5 action strategy of agricultural development program, such as increasing food production capacity, diversification of local food, strengthening food logistics system reserves, development of modern agriculture, and 3-time export program. Then, how can private sector investment in food and agriculture contribute most effectively in our country for food system transformation objective? Based on the data of the Ministry of Investment, total of Indonesian micro and small enterprises project from January to June 2023 is more than 1.6 million projects and investment plan for more than 130 trillion Indonesian rupiah. Agriculture is one of the top 5 micro and small enterprises project investment. Therefore, the agriculture is playing an important role on national investment program to achieve food system transformation objective in Indonesia. Regarding to the ASEAN-RAI guidelines, the private sector includes smallholders, small and medium-sized enterprises, and larger companies. The private sector can contribute most effectively in Indonesia through partnership program, such as partnership between large companies and smallholder farmers in agriculture production system. For example, nucleus plasma partnership system for the welfare of palm oil farmers. And then partnership between financial institution and smallholder farmers in agriculture financial program. For example, for the microfinance program for farmers, KUR program. And then lastly, partnership among smallholders farmers, agribusiness, large-scale investors, cooperative, and small and medium enterprises on food estate program. It is one of the government national strategic project to anticipate food crisis and the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the climate change and also the global crisis. This program combines a number of activities as integrated activity to increase commodity competitiveness and farmers' income. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Leli. And actually, I'm glad you mentioned the ASEAN-RAI guidelines and the partnerships, multiple stakeholders, because Andy will be coming in to speak specifically on this. Thank you for that.
Very welcome.
I'd like to turn to Peter from Limbua Group now as we dive into the private sector perspective. Peter, please tell us a bit about the work Limbua is doing and how are legislative efforts to promote responsible agricultural investment in Kenya impacting on the investment decisions and business practices of companies like yours? And what could government and other actors, international support institutions, be doing more of that could help Limbua engage in more responsible investment that spurs food systems transformation? Over to you, Peter.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nyagodhi, for this interaction, and good morning and good afternoon to everybody. Just a quick recap of Limbua. I personally founded Limbua more than 15 years ago. It is based in the central region of Kenya, and we work closely with smallholders farmers. And currently, we have in our portfolio almost 15,000 smallholders farmers who do small farming on their retail farms around this region. Initially, our products were basically macadamia nuts, but over the years, we have been able to be of taking more of the produce. These include avocado, mangoes, coffee. And we do what is really known as sustainable agriculture in a way that we really invest a lot into training and teaching the farmers on the way how to do sustainable agriculture on their farms. And we are organically certified for so many years. We are certified for EU, NOP, BioSwiss. Also, we have quite a large portfolio of social standards and also regenerative organic certification. To highlight on this, the reason why we opted for this sustainable agriculture, one is we wanted to match the demand of our customers against what the farmers are able to produce in a sustainable way. We wanted to have a project which the farmers themselves will have a sense of ownership, and also due to the small sizes of the farms we have in Kenya, we thought it is good to have an environmental friendly production which will be sustainable in the long run. In so doing, we encourage the participation of the smallholders farmers themselves into the production of the produce we do. And this have been able, due to this, we have set up several facilities. We have facilities which are very, very close to the farmers. We have among our working force that we have the youth and the women, and also the farmers themselves working in these facilities. And they have a kind of ownership into this, such that they are able to participate fully into this. In terms of the regulations and this kind of registration, which are geared towards providing a better working condition for institution or maybe project like the Limbua. One is that the government have come up with quite a number of registration, which have really helped us in a way to be able to set up this kind of institution. And one of these is that the registration, or rather the licensing, have been simplified in a way that today we are able to do business in a more easy way. The cost of doing business is coming down. Of course, we are also affected by this, the cost of energy, and also the cost of infrastructure. Some of the areas where we are operating, we are having a lot of issues in terms of the road network. But coming to the issue of registration is that One, we have registration which are geared towards such being able to receive, to be able to comply with the living wages, like the living wages which are needed, a structure which are generated by the government. And we also have in maybe
Sorry, Peter, are you still there? Hello, Peter, can you hear us? Okay, I'm not too sure if you've lost Peter, but maybe we'll come back in the next round. But thank you for that, mentioning the work that Limbua is doing around integration of farmers in the rural areas. And I think also Christine had mentioned that there's a new initiative that the government is undertaking around rural integration. So I'd be interested to hear, Christine, if you'll be able to unpack a bit about the rural integration policy that's geared towards organizations like Limbua. I'll perhaps turn to Andy. If you could, Andy, if you could tell us a bit about the work Masiko is engaging in Indonesia around responsible investment in agriculture and food system transformation, and what would you say is the importance and role of civil society in ensuring responsible investment in agriculture supports Indonesia's food system transformation objectives?
Okay, thank you, Nayuti. So, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for IISD that having me to share Mercy Corp Indonesia experience on responsible investment in agriculture. I would like also to inform you, as you mentioned about the ASEAN responsible agriculture investing, that actually I was graduate from the ASEAN Academy on the responsible investment in agriculture held by Grow Asia, ASEAN Secretariat, and Nanyang Technological University. So in this actually academy, we learn about the 13 principle under ASEAN-RAI, and then one of basically a guideline about working with the smallholder farmers. So in this short in the limited time, I would like basically to share what actually Mexico is doing in Indonesia related with the one of the deadline that working with the smallholder farmers. And I would like just to share an IoT about the one slide that hopefully I can actually explain in the 5 minutes. Is it okay?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Can you see the screen? Okay. Yeah, so as Ibu Leli mentioned, basically, I would like, I think, to explain then one of the model, the public-private partnership model that we are doing, that we are actually Mexico facilitating. So Mexico Indonesia rules actually is facilitation, the public-private, and also working with the university to, I think, to ensure that we would like to basically provide the solution for smallholder farmers. So when I think the whole participant, I think will understand that one of the challenges faced by the smallholder farmers about the market, right? So and also access to finance and also other advisory services. So 3 years ago, Mexico Indonesia with the Chambers of Commerce, Minister of Agriculture, Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs, and 17 organizations and private sector actually start to pilot, we call the closed loop model. So the closed loop model basically is we would like to ensure that farmers, when they plant, basically they will get best actually access to the market, access to the finance, advisory services, and also high agriculture input. So in this case, basically also we work with the young farmers, which is actually also introduced like a digital tools that actually, as Ibu Leli mentioned, this is also one of the strategy of the government of Indonesia, how to attract the young people back to the agriculture sector. So in this case, basically, we just started with this like a 3 hectare with 10 young farmers in Garut, and also 1 hectare with 10 farmers in Sukabumi. So these 2 districts actually are in West Java, and we are partnering with partnering with the government agency, financial provider, agriculture input provider, university, off-taker, and for sure the farmer group, which is during this pilot, we basically support them to establish the cooperative. So in this area right now, they already have actually farmer cooperative who actually managing their partnership with the public, basically the private sector. So again, I think through understand the needs of the smallholder farmers, this is actually one of, I think, the way how we also contribute as a responsible responsible investment in agriculture. So I think as we learn also from the ASEAN Academy, it's very important basically to understand the needs of the smallholder farmers. If you would like to introduce digital solution, for example, it's very important how actually the digital solution will be provide solution for the smallholder farmers community. Because one of the challenges in Indonesia, basically, we have most of our farmers actually above 45 years old. Right? So that's why I think one of the challenges actually the government will attract the young people back to the agriculture. So through this closed loop model, which is actually it's not only provide basically support to the smallholder farmers, but basically also to test digital solution that actually can attract smallholder farmers to back to the agriculture. So now, after 3 years later, so now the closed loop model now basically is replicating. So according to the data from the Coordinating Minister for Economic Affairs right now, this model already implementing in more than 17 districts in Indonesia, and then actually apply in more than 1,000 hectares. So you can imagine this public-private partnership becomes sustained, and then it will be also contribute to actually the ASEAN responsible investment in agriculture. I will stop there and hopefully and happy to get a question from the participant. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andy. And I'd like to thank you and the panelists for your initial interventions. I see we are almost at 1:45. Perhaps we'll take a few questions before we go to the next round. Sean, maybe I'll hand over to you in case, have you collected?
Thanks, Nyaguthie.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been monitoring the chat box. Lots of really good questions coming in. So let's try to get to them. People have not been indicating who the questions are specifically, so perhaps we could parcel them out. We have a question from Bezwalem around what to do when investment is different from investment in agriculture is different from the livelihood systems of the host community. So where local communities do not benefit from the investment, from technology transfer or work in any of the inclusive modalities such as contract farming or an outgrow scheme, what to do in these situations when the type of investment coming in doesn't match the existing sort of agro systems in place. So that's one question. Should I go through a few questions, or do you want to take one at a time?
Maybe we can take 3 at a go.
3 at a go. Okay. Then we have a question from Aweke, who's asking, he's referring to the fact that many farmers don't have capital, and how to encourage non-farmers to essentially invest in farming, maybe even through public-private partnerships, as Andy was alluding to now. So how do you encourage these collaborations, these partnerships, or these connections between capital providers and the farmers who need the capital? And then Christian makes a comment that Kenya is one of the first countries to have enshrined the right to food in its constitution, but that the measures to implement Article 43 include both food quantity and quality, relating to both food crops and cash crops. So how does this work in practice? How are priorities regulated? How is arbitration between investment projects with different objectives dealt with? And how is sustainability ensured? And I guess that one is probably for Christine. We can leave it there and come back, as I see already a couple of other questions.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Perhaps I'll leave it open to the panelists to decide. Christine, I think the latter question might be more geared towards you, and maybe you can unpack a bit. I think it already alluded to it with the agricultural leases being the framework you're using to regulate this land commercialization initiative. So perhaps you could, maybe we could start with you answering the last question, and then we can take it from there.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Yes, indeed, the right to food and quantity and quality food is enshrined in our constitution. And as I've indicated, out of this, every government that comes, consistently, they've ensured that the right to food and agriculture go hand in hand. So as I've indicated, the current government, the bottom-up economic transformation agenda, agriculture has been highlighted as a priority areas, and I had already alluded to the steps that they've taken. Sorry. So I had already highlighted the steps the government has taken towards ensuring that food is available in the right quantities and qualities. Of course, the government, through the land commercialization initiative, as I've indicated, to the best of our ability, we've been able to transform the RAI principles into the leasing framework to ensure that whatever is done within the public land, because the leasing framework is on public land, whatever is done within there complies with environmental, ecological issues, and must ensure that whatever quality of food comes out of there is quality that is food that is fit for purpose. I also want to indicate that there are various agencies that have been set up within the various legislative platforms to ensure that quality and the quality of food or the quality of whatever agricultural output comes out is well regulated, as has been highlighted by my colleague from Kenya. He's indeed confirmed that the certification process is thorough and ensures that we comply, even as the government goes out there to sign economic partnership agreements with the various countries. We ensure that the compliance that has been set up in those agreements in terms of the quality and the certification, we ensure that the country complies, and that, of course, therefore is triggered down to the farmer. I hope I've answered the question to the satisfaction of the person who asked. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. And maybe I'd like to request if you could share any public database on the land commercialization project, because I think it also addresses the first question that came in on how do you ensure that investments are aligned with the communities where the investments are happening. And I think Kenya's initiative is one, land commercialization initiative is one good example. So if you could please share in the chat box any public information around the land commercialization initiative, that would be helpful. Maybe I could turn to Andy. I don't know if there's or Dr. Leli or Peter, if there's a question from the first round that you'd want to tackle. There's a question that came in on how do you encourage farmers to uptake the engagement in this investments? Andy.
Okay. Go ahead, Bu Leli.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you, Dr. Leli.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ngayuti. Sorry for the internet connection. So I could not open my camera. Is that okay?
That's fine. Please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, actually, there are some programs regarding to the partnership among not only smallholders with the large. investors. But also we have the program. One of the program is the cooperation among the stakeholders, like a food estate, and the example from Pak Andi.
Sorry, Dr. Leli, we've lost you if you can hear me. Dr. Leli? Seems she's having severe internet connection issues. Andy, perhaps you could come in as we wait for Dr. Leli to rejoin.
Okay. I think we already know that. I think if you work with the smallholder farmers, the principal seeing is believing, right? So you won't basically attract farmers just through the word. They would like to see the example. So what actually we did when we actually start with this closed loop model, partnering with the several organization and private sector, actually start from the demonstration plot. So we just start with the small one, and then actually brought this public and private partners and university basically design, we call like a standard operation procedure or protocol that actually we hope those actually participants will follow, because usually this is they just plan as, for example, their parents or their neighbor, right? So through this public-private partnership in closed loop model, basically we try to change their behavior, how they should adapt with the climate change, for example, how we introduce about the intercropping to basically to adapt with the climate change. So those basically education advisory need. It's not only about like a training and also like a mentoring, but it's very important that we like to, I think they will see the result. So we design like a demonstration plot, and then the whole participant, the whole partner box actually provide the support. And then the end of this like a harvest cycle, they will see. Or I'll just give you an example. In Garut, we I think one of the crop they plant actually we call red chili, right, which is actually go to the industry. But when we start this, these farmers actually, even though they call red chili, but they never actually harvest red chili. They always harvest only green chili, right? So how actually, because they're just thinking about the risk. So with this partnership with the public, private, and university, basically for now provide like a solution to the farmer that basically they can use and then get, I think, a good result. So with this, I think the partnership, and finally, farmers has confidence and then apply the advisory that our partner provide.
Thank you so much. Sean, I'll turn to you. Maybe we can just take one or two questions.
We have a question from Duncan about the benefits of organic production and asking what are governments doing to encourage the development of organic ingredient industry as an important contributor to economic development and food production.
Thanks, Sean. Dr. Leli, I see you've unmuted. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah. Regarding to the question about how the government support for the using of the organic fertilizers or pesticides, now actually our government give the subsidy for the industry. This is very important because regarding to the changing on the climate, as well as the situation now that unorganic is getting worse in agriculture. So now we support and the farmers with subsidy for the organic fertilizers. And also now we promote the program using organic to increase not only for the income of the farmers, but also for the healthy food for the consumers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leli. I think I'll turn to the panelists now, just in 1 minute or less, if you could let us know, how can responsible private sector investment in food and agriculture contribute most effectively to your country's food systems transformation objectives? Maybe we can start with Christine. You're the first on my screen.
Okay, thank you, Nyagudi. I just want to quickly speak on the issue of the private sector and the partnership we have with government. Under the National Agricultural and Rural Inclusive Growth Project, we have a group of, we have communities having to organize themselves into groups. They do what we call table banking, especially women in the country do a lot of the table banking. They contribute like $5 to $10. So when the program came, they were sensitized in the local community barazas, and they were informed about the NARIG project. And in that sensitization, they were able to form themselves into a cooperative society where they're able to get funding of like 500,000, like for example, to rear chicken. If you go to their website, you'll be able to see the success story. But having said that, the government really encourages the public-private partnership. We have various initiatives that have been undertaken to grow crops or to do agriculture with the private sector. As you've heard from my colleague from Kenya, the private sector plays a key role in the sensitization and training of the smallholder, the small communities, into sustainable methods of agriculture. We also have them coming in to support government in policy coherence and just formulation of policy for the betterment of the sector. They also support the farmers and of course government by extension when they provide for financial resources. And we also have the private sector giving agro input supply, which improves accessibility to the producers, and also it provides credits. The private sector.
Sorry, Christine, I'll have to 1 minute. It was 1 minute or less. We're actually at the hour. Thank you so much for that input. And I think it preempts Peter. Peter, I don't know if you were able to reconnect with us. In 30 seconds, how can responsible private sector investment in food and agriculture contribute most effectively to Kenya's food systems transformation objectives? And after Peter, we can go to Andy and then Dr. Leli. Okay, I think Peter is still having issues. Over to you, Andy.
Yeah, I think there are two things. The first one actually understands needs of the smallholder farmer and hear their voice. The second point basically to attract the private investment. I think it's very important to demonstrate to them about the use case and the business case. So even though we just started from the small one, but it's very important for the private sector to see the potential of the business case. So combine between the potential of business case and then also understand the need of the smallholder farmers. Hopefully we can basically apply this responsible investment. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Andy. And I think we've lost Dr. Leli, but we actually are at the hour. And we are moving to the end of this event. And so before closing my remarks, I would like to invite you to kindly fill in our post-event survey. It will automatically pop up when the session is closed and won't take more than a few seconds to respond. My colleague Sean will put it in the chat. We've had a very rich discussion today, and it would be impossible to summarize it in a few words. I'd like to really thank the panelists for your enriching insights. And I'd like to just summarize by 3 to 4 key messages that I've heard today. One, responsible investment in agriculture that leads to food systems transformation requires having the right kinds of laws and policies in place to attract, implement, and enforce an enabling environment for these objectives. We've heard from Christine as well as Dr. Leli on the various initiatives, policies, and as well as the constitutions that are underpinning these frameworks to drive change. Secondly, companies are interested in engaging in responsible investment that spur food systems, but they do need the right support. Third, we've heard from Andy, civil society is an integral part in the ecosystem, as they can help enhance inclusive processes for a variety of stakeholders. And then, as we've heard from almost all speakers, small-scale producers, family farmers are key constituents to food systems transformation. They are majority by numbers of food supply, but they are also the world's poorest today. So how we design interventions for sustainable development has to have their voice and inclusion at the center. And finally, I'd like to thank all of you participants for joining us. I know an hour was quite short, but we really appreciated your questions and your comments throughout the session. And I'd like to sincerely thank our panelists for their availability and very enriching insights. I'd also like to thank the entire ISD team that made this event possible. Maria, Hafiz, Ronald, Vivian, and Sean, thank you so much. And I want to wish everybody a good day and thank you for joining us.